Hello and welcome to a new Out of Spec Testing episode. This is a new start of a new series, depending on if you guys like this type of content. I think it'll be super interesting. What I want to see is how every electric car behaves when you run them to dead, when you drive them all the way to zero and they stop moving entirely. Now, this type of test requires some equipment. It requires an electric car. This is my Nissan Leaf Limo, and it's all modified and got 2 battery packs wired into it, and it will be our first test subject because it was already low on charge, and I thought, well, let's just start it with good old America. And this is my Charge Rig's mobile DC fast charger. It's powered by 120 kilowatt hours worth of LFP modules, which then feeds two DC fast charging ports out the side of it. I have a whole video explaining how this works and what I've been doing with it, but I thought since we have the mobile DC charger, this should be a really fun series to do. Also, I want to do this series ahead of our typical 70 mile per hour highway range test, because sometimes when we do range tests of cars, it's fairly unpredictable what will happen at the end. We don't know if we should stay on the highway pretty far, what the buffers are like, and it is a little bit concerning at times to be on public roads when we're running completely dead and we don't know how the car will perform. So I'm thinking we basically do this test ahead of our 70 mile per hour highway range tests. It's an interesting video to see what the car does, and that way when we're out on public roads doing our range test and we still have to charge up off our Charge Rigs trailer, at least we know what the behavior will be like. So let me know what you think about the new series. I think we're going to call it the Run to Zero here on Out of Spec Testing, and our first test subject is my 2012 Nissan Leaf Limo. I genuinely can't wait to see what happens when I run this one to zero. Well, the run to zero, we need to basically figure out how we're going to do this, and it's really to determine the behavior of what the car does when it's just about to run out of charge, what warnings come up, how does it communicate to the driver that, hey, you're about to stop, and then also, is it able to accept a charge when it dies? For example, some GM vehicles have given us a ton of problems after we run them to zero, and it would have been great to know that before we were out on the public roads dealing with pulling 12-volt batteries and stuff like that. So our first car that I'm going to run to dead is my Nissan Leaf Limo. Now, it shouldn't really hurt the batteries in any of these cars to run them all the way out and then immediately put some juice in them. If anything, we get a little bit of bottom balance out of it, which I'm kind of wanting to do in this case. You see, the original battery pack for my Nissan Leaf Limo is actually inside the car. You can head on over to our Out of Spec Renew YouTube channel, and I'll leave linked the video. My colleague Alex took the battery out of the bottom of the car and wired in on a rack the original 24 kilowatt hour Nissan Leaf battery pack. Now, what I have down here is another supplemental 12-volt battery. This is totally responsible for feeding the BMS system of this secondary battery pack. And I just keep it on a 12-volt tender so that it always has juice and it can do its own cell balancing of that battery. Now, wired directly in parallel underneath the car is a used battery pack that we found on Facebook Marketplace or something for $600. It's almost a Lizard battery pack, a much healthier, much newer, much higher capacity 24 kilowatt hour pack in there. Now, our main concern Alex and I have had is we're taking an old battery pack with degraded cells and a relatively fresh battery pack with much less degraded cells, and we're cycling the car a bunch of times, and it could lead to some issues down the road. And Alex suggested for safety that once we're done testing and using the Leaf for everything, we actually just take these modules out and keep the healthy battery pack in there. So far, I have to say, both he and I are impressed because the car has not thrown a fault code. It has not done a weird BMS thing. It has just worked as if this was one cohesive battery pack with 0 glitches and 0 faults. And that to me is just incredible. Now, of course, I will do a charging test and a full range test on this vehicle, but before we do a range test of our Nissan Leaf Limo, which I'm really curious to see how far this will go with the 2 battery packs, I think a pretty juicy distance, I want to know what happens when we run it to zero in our Run to Zero test. Now, we have a closed course testing conditions here at the Out of Spec track, a perfect place to do this type of test. I have our Charge Rigs trailer. It will charge the Leaf with the A to Z CCS to CHAdeMO adapter. I'll show you that here briefly so you can understand what the plan is at the end. The end of the test, we're going to plug in the ChargeRig CCS connection, and then I'll plug the CHAdeMO into the Leaf, and we already know this works, and that should work. Will it work at 0%? I don't know. As a backup solution, I have a, you may have seen in a recent video, I have a mobile on wheels, sort of lower power version of this, and it's an EcoFlow Delta Pro Ultra. And I can bring that over and actually AC charge cars at 7 to 9 kilowatts wherever we need, which will be amazing. So I'm very much, able to DC or AC charge anywhere on the roads now, which means we can do our run to zero safely. So what I've done in the Leaf, let's talk testing procedures. And I think we'll kind of do this to keep these videos relatively short because they don't need to be super long. This will probably be the longest because it requires most explanation. If you can peek your camera in here, this is our state of charge graph on the right side. Not the full right bar, but these fat bars. We are down to 1 bar, and the car just dipped from 2 bars to 1 bar. And the way I understand it is between 1 bar all the way up to almost the top bar is about 6.5% increments of the battery pack. However, when this shows 0 bars, when that bar goes away completely, we still have, at least according to the internet, 16% state of charge left in the battery pack. Now, if I was doing this test properly, which I will do in the future because I've got to order a few, I would normally have Leaf Spy hooked up to my OBD port, not only on the main battery, but I could hook up a separate Leaf Spy to my secondary battery pack in there. I don't know where any of my OBD ports are, my little readers, so I've got to order a stack of them on Amazon, but I wanted to get this video in because ultimately it doesn't really matter what's happening. We're going to be able to run this thing to dead. I'm going to plug it into the ChargeRigs, and that should tell us the battery pack voltage when it's on the floor. So what we're going to do is see how many miles we can go once this indicates, let's say 0 miles of range, 0% state of charge, and turtle mode. So we'll have a couple key metrics that we'll log for every vehicle. I'm going to just drive normally. I don't know what, if this is a good comparison test per se. I don't want to go too crazy with it. I think I'll just drive 40 to 50 miles an hour around the track, not tire squealing, nothing like that, no hard acceleration, just a representative, B road speed, not highway speed, but B road speed. If you find yourself, low on charge, pull off the highway, take the back roads. That's what we're going to simulate here for all the way till it stops moving. Then we'll take the truck over and charge it up wherever it dies. So join me for our first ever run to zero in the Leaf Limo. Well, I'm kind of coming up with run to zero testing procedures all on my own here and sort of a last minute. We'll just run climate control. I don't even think we're going to run like crazy eco mode or anything like that. And it's more about just what the warnings look like and all that stuff. So what I'll do is, we're at 1 bar of range. As soon as it dips to 0 bars or 0 miles, we're going to start the odometer and see how many miles it takes for stuff to happen. So off we go for a drive in the Leaf Limo. This thing is so cool. I love this car. It's amazing how nice it drives. Truly awesome car, awesome find. Best $3,500 I've ever spent on a car. Was it 3,000? I don't even remember. And we do have a battery level is low indication. I can click this little button right there to clear it, and then we can go through everything. So we have just about 20,000 miles on this Leaf. But again, don't forget, this was a Las Vegas limo, which means it was in the heat, probably left at 100%. And that is why this battery pack is degraded so badly. So what we'll do is we'll go windows up. We'll go, I would say between 30 and 50 miles an hour for the test, something like that. 30 and 50, that would be a good test. We'll just do that. And I'll let you know as soon as we dip to 0 bar, 0 mile, and that's when we'll start the countdown. I think that'll be great. Well, I just stopped in here to start the test. We are officially 10 miles to go that last bar, which seems like a really long distance, but we just went to dash and 0 bar. So let's reset trip A right there. We'll put it in drive. I think may as well just put it in eco mode for these because I feel like that's the most customer representative. It says very low battery. Would you like to search for a nearby charging station? And then it shows me, I guess, some previous stations that I've plugged into here. So it has some kind of memory. So that's pretty funny. But those are not official charging stations in a map. And we're just going to go, now that we've got the trip odometer reset, Let's see how long it takes until it dies completely. I'll, of course, let you know how many warnings pop up and how the performance feels. The cool thing is I can even pull up my energy info and see how much energy we're pulling. We can also see we have dash, 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 or star, star, star miles remaining. Everything is out. We never got it this low on our 500-mile road trip. So this is going to be super duper interesting to see what happens when it dies completely. And as you can see, my sort of testing procedure, while it's not constant speed and standard, I think it's just representing that low speed B-roll type or B-road type situation, 30 to 50 miles an hour, gentle driving, no tire squealing, nothing like that. Just cruising, light to medium throttle applications, not trying to drain it, not trying to do anything crazy. Just to, I guess, drive in a sense in an efficient way, simulating what a customer would do at this point, so that we don't sag the pack and make it die early or anything like that. This should just be somewhat customer representative driving. And we've already gone a full mile and no indication of poor performance or anything like that whatsoever. Everything is feeling good and performing pretty much as new. I'll let you know if anything else pops up, any more warnings. But for now, we just have the battery level is low on the dash. And we're just going to keep rolling till something else happens. Oh, I just felt a huge power cut. I was looking at our efficiency, 3 miles per kilowatt hour. I am now to the floor. Turtle mode is on. So if I lift off, we regen. If I hit the throttle, does anything output? A tiny, tiny amount. I'm in eco mode. We've gone 7.5 miles past zero. Indicated zero, but now we're definitely at the bottom. My foot is to the floor. So I'm guessing testing procedure should be, in this case, just keep it floored, because that's simulating what we're going to do in the 70 mile per hour range test. Now this is the only tight-ish section of the track, but no problem to run it at 30 miles an hour. And you can see it's not dead. Here comes Alyssa with the truck and the trailer. I'm just going to have her come after us. And yeah, we are dying. We are completely going. It's still blowing AC. You can see it's using climate control. I'm also riding the charging curve of my phone because my phone's at 1%. So hopefully my phone and the car don't die at the same time. Super interesting that it was feeling good. And then I just felt a boom, power cut. Turtle mode kicked on right at that moment, which is this little icon right there. And all it says is battery low. I can exit out of that and nothing major to see. 2.9 to 3 miles per kilowatt hour seems pretty reasonable. And it is maintaining 29 miles an hour. So again, I'm floored and we're not losing speed. It just is, again, turtle mode indicating that right there. 8 miles past zero right there. And it's just cruising. We actually went up to 30 miles an hour. So I'm just going to keep my foot floored and I'll try and meet up with Alyssa to get my battery bank, but I got to keep my phone from dying. This is not well planned, but that's all right. That's all in the spirit of the Leaf Limo. Nothing is too spec on this car. I wonder if it's a speed limitation because it does seem to be outputting a bit more energy, or if it just limits to 30 and then gives you the power you need there, or it's just saying, hey, you can have this much power output and that's it. Power output limitation makes sense. A speed limitation doesn't. I think this little uphill climb indicates it is a power output limitation. It feels like 5 kilowatts or so is all we're able to do because, again, I'm floored and we're losing speed on the uphill here, but it's still outputting. All right, this is super interesting. I'm so glad we're doing this test. I'm going to keep it wide open. I'm going to make sure this battery doesn't explode behind me, and yep, we'll see what happens. We have just completed our first lap in turtle mode, and that is basically, 2 miles right on the nose, more or less, of when we went into turtle mode and the power was cut. So, and we're still able to maintain, 29, 30 miles an hour. My foot has not left wide open throttle position. Things are going pretty well. I'll keep you updated if we start to slow down, but for now, we still seem to have the same power output available, and our efficiency is still right around 3 miles per kilowatt hour, which feels a bit low. I bet we're doing a bit better than that. Picking up the pace after going through the corner. Going around that corner, we definitely lose some speed. I don't want to lift because I want to give this a fair shot. So we are doing better economy, 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour. I was looking at the different metric right there. So many different screens to track efficiency. So I'm floored, and I'm going to keep it floored. We've now gone 10 miles past zero. And it's still going. That might be a pretty damn good record. I guess, do we like good or bad? I can't slow down. I'm sorry. I can't stop. She's trying to hand me her battery pack, but I just want to keep it pinned. I don't want to ruin the results. We just keep going, but climate control is really lessening its effect. It was just at 0 for a while, just popped back up. We've gone 12.6 miles after we hit 0% now. And again, climate control is just pulling the tiniest bit, but we're still moving along. It just seems like 30 miles an hour. That's the number that this wants to go. Update, I had to stop and get the phone charger, but my phone was dying. But honestly, this thing gets right back up to 30 miles an hour, or close to it, 25 miles an hour, no problem. So there are certain types of turtle mode, right? There's turtle mode when you're at the end of what the battery can do, and then there's software implemented turtle modes to limit power output to either extend range or prevent bottom bricking of the battery pack by pulling too much juice at the end. And this is clearly a software implemented function right here, this turtle mode, because it's just giving us a preset factor of power output, and we've been doing it for a while. We're 16 miles after we hit 0, over 8 miles, 9 miles or so after we hit turtle mode, and we're still going. This is wild. And like I was mentioning earlier, this could be good or bad depending on your viewpoint. Forgive the camera angle as I'm hooked up to power, but I guess, should 0 mean 0, or should there always be a buffer? And by how much buffer should there be? That's what I guess we're going to determine what the industry is doing by benchmarking a bunch of electric vehicles in this test. And then maybe I'll leave the actual answer to that question up to you guys to debate in the comment section. I really could see both arguments, 0 meaning 0 and there also being a buffer below 0. I'm curious to see what you all think, what the true answer should be to that question. For sure, in the Nissan Leaf, 0 does not mean 0. Oh, I just felt it cut out a little bit, and I see no power output on anything. So it actually was running climate control and air conditioning all the way up until then. 18.9 miles. It's put itself into neutral, and we have a little red battery icon. Interesting. So I'm still staying floored. I want the wheel to not have to be turned. Still staying floored, 18.9 miles, and it will not go into drive. It's just locked itself in neutral. So I'm gonna put the hazards on to indicate to Alyssa to come and get me. She's just over there in the truck. And we did 19 miles. So we did what? About 12 miles past turtle mode, and then roughly 7 miles before turtle mode. So that all worked out really well. 19.1 miles. It's gonna die. We'll just move it over here to the edge of the track. That is impressive how far it went. I am blown away. My other Leaf barely can do 20 miles in a charge, and this just did 20 miles past 0, 19 miles past 0, and plenty past turtle mode. That is the end. She is not recognizing that I'm dead. Hello. Come and pick us up. We're over here. Yeah, she's honking. So the fan is still running, but climate control is off. Now to save the 12 volt, we'll turn that off. We'll turn the hazards off. I'll put it into park. Now, if I turn it off and turn it back on, will it let us move? The answer is nope. Battery level's too low. We have the red icon on. So whenever that battery icon's on, it means we're at very low battery. I'm also going to go through and pull up our energy info. And we got 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour on that stretch. Pretty good for this car, at least. And Alyssa is on her way in the Super Duty to come charge us up. Sweet. And here it is. We have arrived. Perfect. So it's already on. We have our Out of Spec logo right there on the screen. Shout out to Charge Rigs for sending us this so we could do tests like this. Let's see if this thing will actually charge from 0. Well, I've got my CHAdeMO to CCS adapter so that we're able to juice this thing up off the trailer. So let me get it hooked up, see what happens. Well, let's pull out the DC fast charging cable. This is an Amphenol 200 amp unit. This charger can typically only do about 80 kilowatts for 400 volt vehicles, which is more than fine for an emergency roadside charge. So let's get it hooked in here it should be set to auto charge. So we'll go in, I'll turn on the adapter. Let's come over to the charger. It says charging station starting right here. It's at 100% state of charge, this unit is. And we should be juicing up. Yeah, contactors are going. Yeah, power modules are spinning up. Things are good. The handshake's always a bit long with this A to Z adapter. It's got to do a lot of communications, a lot of thinking going on in there. Contactors just clicked on the Leaf. And we're at 0%. And we're charging. That's absolutely awesome. And the fans go wild on this thing as it spins up all the power modules. Hell yeah, we are juicing. Pretty interesting how if with only half a kilowatt hour dispensed, it went right up to 1% state of charge. If this graph is working, we should be able to see the voltage output, and here it goes. Nice. So let's take a look. Our voltage is 296 volts dead right there. Boom, 296 dead. I don't know what demand voltage is. And then as soon as we put load on it, it shot up to 318. Now, I was really expecting this car to do some extra weird stuff with the secondary battery in there. And I should also mention that the car is not really factoring in the secondary battery's metrics. The BMS does not communicate to the vehicle. So it's very possible that we did irreversible damage to the second battery by draining it all the way, especially running it at wide open throttle. Now, that battery, if it survives, is great. If it dies, also great. Doesn't matter to me. It'd be cool to repurpose it for stationary storage or something. It will not stay in the vehicle long term. I mostly care about the battery health that's inside of the Leaf currently. But yeah, it is charging at 43 kilowatts right now, which is about the maximum the Leaf will want. We'll see what happens when we do a pretty deep charging run on it. I would love to get the 0 to 100% charge log on this car. But how cool is that? We can run it to dead and charge it up immediately right off the side of the road. Absolutely love it. Very interesting test. Well, there you go, guys. The first ever run to zero on Out of Spec. So many cool videos that we can do with access to a closed road course like this. Again, I think a lot of you were expecting us having access to the track just doing performance-y stuff. Well, no, I thought we could do a series of interesting experiments all here, this being one of the ones I'm most excited about. Now, I don't see any flame or smoke coming out of the car at the moment. No thermal event, no smell of anything. So I'm happy we didn't blow anything up, and I really hope we didn't damage that battery. My guess is because they are linked in parallel, everything should be operating at the same voltage. And, you know, some cells will just be under a little bit more stress than others. So I think we're safe. I think we're okay. But a very odd car, and of course, not a user representative car, which is why I wanted it to be the first. If we mess things up, then we'll go. A couple things to think about, which is, should we run a set speed around the course from when we hit 0% or 0 miles to dead? I think what makes sense to me in each car is, you know, when do we actually start the odometer, the trip meter, to measure how far we went past 0? I think if the car is indicating 1 mile or 1%, there's hope. That means that as a driver, you're like, okay, I'm not going to run out right now because it shows 1. I think when both show 0, 0% or 0 miles, you know, when both show 0, that's when we start the counter. That's my guess. That's how I would do it. So, you know, whichever's the last one to tick to 0, boom, that's when we start the miles past 0. And very interesting behavior down here. It was wild to just feel full power and then boom, turtle mode. It gives you like 5 to 7 kilowatt output and just limits you to around 30 miles an hour. I kept it floored for what felt like 20 plus minutes where we went almost 20 miles. It was 19 point something. I'll make sure it gets logged past 0 in the Leaf Limo. I wonder if we had half the battery, like the original battery, I wonder if we would only go half the distance past 0. Again, we do have quite a bit of capacity in this, and thankfully I have another Nissan Leaf that we can test it on when that makes its way out here to North Carolina. I can't wait to do this with every electric car. Let me know what you think we should adjust or add or take into account with this. But for now, I'm also logging a 0 to 100% charging test on the Leaf with the CCS to CHAdeMO adapter sent to me by A to Z. Just a great freaking setup to be able to use the charge rigs to charge up all of our vehicles on the side of the road. This series is really possible thanks to them and EcoFlow for vehicles that don't support DC fast charging, I can AC charge with the EcoFlow. So thanks so much for watching another Out of Spec Testing episode. Should, run to zero, should zero mean zero, or should cars go past zero with a buffer, and by how much? I want to see your questions, your answers to that question in the comments. And that's about all I've got for you. See you, bye.